T.Taylor is a consultant and trainer who has worked in the commercial cleaning sector for over 40 years. Tommy met with ThisWeekinFM to discuss how we can uplift people working in the industry and how specific training standards in cleaning are essential in a post-COVID world. Please introduce yourself and tell us how you came to work in the FM sector.
I've been working in the FM industry, cleaning industry, since about 1979. I started off really when I left school, I'd been a trainee cabinet maker, and after 3 years I'd sort of had enough, and then I went into the cleaning industry. And from there I worked for what was then called the Greater London Council, GLC, and I worked for them in various locations, and what essentially started off as just a job managing cleaning, it was actually a job managing buildings. So I ended up managing 3 buildings in the centre of London. And I was there for 10 years, and then I had an opportunity to get into education, so I went and I taught for a while, and that's really how I started off. It was by pure fluke, it wasn't by design.
Tell us about some of your career highlights.
Yeah, there's a couple of highlights in the sense that in 1996 I was asked to, as part of my college, to go to Malaysia to set up a joint venture. Unfortunately, that fell through due to the financial crisis, and then about a year later, the contractor then came to see me and asked me to go to Malaysia, and I'd worked there for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Set up a training school, and it was all centred around healthcare, because at the time the Malaysian government had privatised the hospitals and hospital provision. And the company that I worked for had 129 units that needed to be serviced. So yes, I was very much part of the training scenario. And I think that was a highlight for me, although it was difficult in the end and I got homesick and I came home. After the 3 years, it was a really good experience, and it taught me quite a lot really in terms of people, because I am a people's person. That's why I do the job I do, because I like people. And the other one was that through my then mentor, a guy called Peter Vickers, he was the one who actually recommended me for the job at the college, and I worked for the Hackney College for a couple of years, doing cleaning, doing supervisory studies and IT. And again, that was an enjoyable experience. It was more hands-on. There was, there's always, people to train, etc. And I liked it, and that's really why I do the job that I do, because it's all about people. It's about sort of making sure that people are uplifted, especially people who are cleaning operatives, who are generally seen to be the low of the low. But actually, there are lots of good people out there who want to progress, who just don't want to be cleaners. And the old phrase is, you don't wake up in the morning and put cleaning down as a career choice. And people are found in that position just through circumstance.
How can the cleaning industry raise standards and elevate staff training?
I think it's not difficult. It's not difficult in terms of how you think about it. I think sometimes it's difficult to achieve. And why I say that is because training involves money. Training involves obviously the human resource, and both are not readily available in the cleaning field. So if you employ a cleaning operative for 2 hours, there's not an awful lot of time there to pull them away for training, because essentially your client is paid for 2 hours cleaning, that's what they want. So it's very difficult in terms of doing that. I think that the main way that can be uplifted really is that the whole industry has to be working to a specific standard in terms of the level of cleaning, how much training people are exposed to, how many hours, and the quality of training. So there's a lot to be done, and I think that also it's not just necessarily about the company, it's also about our clients. If our clients are determined and demand and training for the operatives that work on their sites and look for evidence that they've been trained, then it can only be good for the industry. But currently in a lot of locations that's not really the case, so hence training does fall slightly flat on its face really. The other thing is that because of the way that the demographics in our industry, in terms of people who can speak or understand English, it does prove to be slightly difficult. And the analogy that I put to it, if you've got 2 cleaners that work on the same site, one's trained and one's not trained, well, what's the differential between them? Nothing. One's been trained, one hasn't been trained. There's no financial incentive, for the person that's been trained. There's no penalty if there is a penalty, and if the person that hasn't been trained gets less than the person that has, if they're not confident enough to sort of put their case forward in terms of training, they'll leave and go somewhere else. So if the industry is not working together and saying, well, actually, if you've not been trained, I can't take you on, it's never going to happen in the way that we want it to happen.
The APPG for the cleaning and hygiene industry says there must be more support to change the perceptions of the sector. How do you think this can be achieved?
I think it is actually crucial to what's happening is that I welcome the fact that I'll say politicians in general, not just the government, but politicians in general are getting involved. I find it unfortunate that they're only getting involved because of COVID, because this was needed and necessary long before COVID. I find it disappointing that in the building that is seen as being number one, which is number 10 Downing Street, that the cleaning operatives were abused and not cared for during the COVID process. And it gives me no joy in the sense that I feel that sometimes politicians do things half-heartedly when they're not looking after their own first. And when I mean looking after their own, we shouldn't be having headlines where people are racially abused and abused in number 10 Downing Street. It shouldn't happen. What worries me is that some of it is quite vague. It worries me that the fact that they're sitting around the table discussing as one of the points that hand washing should be, or hand hygiene should be, a number one, as in terms of the clean-up, that should have been a given. That's not something that you need because of COVID. People should have been washing their hands before that whole scenario. So in that respect, I'm disappointed. I'm glad that they're actually trying to do something about it. I think we're in the words that they're behind the 8 ball, because there are countries that handle COVID much better than us. There are countries that had regulations and they had standards where cleaning companies had to put in a viable bid, not financial bid, but put in a viable bid to be able to clean COVID locations. Where on here, we didn't do that. We just allowed anybody who had a disinfectant in the cloth to do what they wanted to do. So in terms of what they're doing, yes, I understand, and I think it's a good thing to do. In terms of when you read the report, when you read the bullet points, it's very vague. There's no timelines to it. If there's no timelines, then nothing gets done in a hurry. And unless you can say we need to implement this by, December 2024, then it's just an open-ended book. We're cleaning public facilities, we're cleaning schools, we're cleaning hospitals are a lot more rigid in terms of what their expectations are, to be perfectly frank. Schools are not so much, because they act as an autonomous institution. So it really depends on the head teacher, the bursar, or whoever, to define what the standards will be. But there's basic standards. There's basic standards in terms of what I've been saying in terms of training. There's basic standards in colour coding. There's basic standards in the kind of chemicals you use. But at the moment, we don't have that standard. I think we, given that the cleaning industry probably employs well over 1 million people, for an industry like ours not to have a basic set of standards that people have to work to is just a travesty. It goes back to where I started, really. I think that it's about people, always about people. It's about treating people the right way. It's about giving people the right tools to do the job, and it's about making people feel loved. And being loved means hi, good morning, or thank you very much. And that's it. A lot of cleaners, a lot of clean operators don't want much more.